We're going to record. We're getting started. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Newton Kimberly. I am the Career Catalyst for Careers with Social Impact at Ohio Wesleyan University. I just want to thank you all for being here today for the third iteration of the program called the Success Series, which is a program designed to show the many different ways that students can and have been successful with degrees in the same category. Today we are focusing on Africana, gender, and identity studies. It's a new category, so I just messed it up and I apologize. But we have some wonderful alumni here that we are going to go ahead and introduce to be able to start talking about their work, who they are, and kind of how they got where they are today. So we will go ahead and get started with Lisette, if you don't mind starting off.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much for being here. I guess I'll talk a little bit about my experience at OWU and then what I'm doing currently. So I graduated in 2017. While I was there, one of the things that was the most important to me is I was the moderator for SAGE, which is the Sexuality and Gender Equality House. It's a SLU, a small living unit. And I was there when they changed the name from Women's House to SAGE to kind of encompass the identity aspect. And I was part of VIVA, which predominantly helped to support Latin American students and then anyone really interested in Latin American culture, and also Greek life and various things while I was there. As of 2017, I worked with Planned Parenthood and also in various roles as a case manager. And I am currently at Centro Multicultural La Familia, which is in Pontiac, about 30 minutes outside of Detroit. And it is a center that predominantly works with Spanish-speaking folks in the area with issues like immigration, domestic violence, assault. And I work under a grant helping people who have been victims of crime and kind of just helping them get resources and situated with whatever they may need. And I am starting my social work master's in the fall at University of Michigan.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for being here. Next, we can go to Mary Kate.
Hey, I'm happy to be here. My name is Mary Kate Blakechip. I graduated from OWU in 2017. As you can see, I got a SOAN degree as well as a Black World Studies degree. I also was on the track and field team. So that was pretty much the only things I did while at OWU. I also studied abroad. I did the Carly, what year did we go? I went to Tanzania first semester.
2014.
2014, all blends together. So that was really impactful and really served as a catalyst to what I do as a career now. I'm a licensed social worker. I finished my master's degree in 2020 in social work. It's just a fancy way Case Western Reserve University likes to say MSW. So Lisette, good luck. You're going to do great. My current role is a program administrator for our Single Mothers Program for refugees. And I also oversee a program called Preferred Communities, which is a medical intensive case management program offered to refugees and those who hold a special immigrant visa. So if you're up to date on the Afghan crisis, I will be receiving a lot of those in the coming weeks and months. I do work within a resettlement agency in Cleveland, Ohio at Catholic Charities. And it's kept me pretty busy. I've also done a few other case management type roles, and I'm just now stepping into this more leadership role, overseeing grants. So it's been a really fun time.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Mary Kate. All right, next we can go to Jessica.
Hey, good afternoon. I'm so happy to be with you all today. I'm Jessica, she, her. I serve as an assistant vice president at San Diego State University. And in my portfolio, I provide leadership to our 9 cultural centers on campus. I actually was hired at SDSU to open the very first Women's Resource Center. So I did Women's Resource Center work for some time, and our cultural centers have really expanded at SDSU. We have 9, an APITA Center, Black Resource Center, Cross-Cultural Center, Center for Transformative Justice, which serves our previously incarcerated students, Latinx Resource Center, Native Resource Center, Pride, WRC, and Undocumented. And then I also provide leadership to our EOP program, which is for first generation low income students, and our recruitment and retention efforts. I graduated from Ohio Wesleyan in 2008. I grew up in Southern California in Los Angeles, so I kind of randomly ended up at OU, but just had a really, really transformative experience. I majored in women's studies. I ran cross country, Mary Kate, just for 2 years, and then I ended. But I also was involved in Greek life. I studied abroad. I did a feminist study abroad trip where we traveled to 5 different countries and met with scholars and activists in each place. I think it's a university that no longer is existing, Antioch College, but that was a really powerful experience for me. And then I was really involved in sexual violence issues. This was in 2008, in the early aughts. This was before the Dear Colleague letter from the Obama administration that really reformed sexual violence on college campuses. And at OU, I was very involved in those conversations about having better support for survivors and clearer reporting institutional requirements when sexual violence occurred. And those were really powerful conversations for me to be involved in at the time. And then I also worked as a sexual assault response advocate through a local nonprofit that I can't remember the name of in Delaware, but that was also a really positive experience and powerful, responding to the hospital and supporting survivors. I got my master's degree in women's studies in 2010, so I went straight from undergrad to graduate school, and then I took a long break, and now I'm in a doctoral program for educational leadership, and so working on my doctorates, and I'm doing research specifically around how community-specific resources like resource centers are so important to student success and thriving on campus. So thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here with you today.
Thank you, Jessica. And Carly.
Hello, I'm Carly. I graduated in 2016 with a bachelor's in Black Girl Studies and International Studies. At OU, I was part of Greek life. I also studied abroad with Mary Kate in Tanzania, which kind of catapulted me into what I'm doing now. And I also did a theory to practice grant in public health while I was there with the Medical Women's Association of Tanzania to help with breast and cervical cancer screenings. After that, I went to George Washington University to get my master's degree in public health. And while I was there, I completed a Bourne Fellowship abroad for a year in Tanzania, studying Swahili, and then working again with the Medical Women's Association of Tanzania, just helping with grants and also helping find funding for more breast and cervical cancer screenings around Tanzania. And I just recently accepted a position with PEPFAR as a program support officer at the Department of State. So I can't talk too much about the job yet since I've just started onboarding, but I will be doing stuff related to the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, if that's what PEPFAR stands for, which helps provide funding and resources for HIV/AIDS testing, and mentor programs and other partnerships globally.
Wonderful. Well, congratulations on the new role, and thank you very much for being here. So we're going to kind of go into a scripted Q&A, just with some questions about our wonderful alumni's experiences, some of the things that they learned during their time here, and then for the last half an hour or 20 minutes, we're going to open it up for your questions. So let's start with the first question, which I'm going to combine the first two. If you could just talk about what about your degree was so appealing to you coming into Ohio Wesleyan University, and then how did that degree and that department kind of help and gear you up for your current role or for your work history? And we can go in order again, or anyone is willing to jump. Well, you know what? Let's go in order. Lisette, do you mind going first?
Sure, yeah. So I was in the Women and Gender Studies Department and Latin American Studies Department. I would say really the interdisciplinary aspect of it. Also, what I really enjoyed about OWU was being in classroom sizes that were very small. So I got a lot of one-on-one with professors. I was able to complete projects with them that were really centered on my interests, which I think is hard to do if you are not going to a small school. So really the support of professors to really let you explore what you want to. And then Women and Gender Studies, really, I think the aspect of learning a lot about racial justice, gender, sexuality really ended up helping me with my desire to help people, having that knowledge. And I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do after undergrad, but having the education I did, it was actually relatively easy to find jobs and find places that I could work in, and then see where life led me after that.
Wonderful. That's great. Thank you.
I think it's me.
Yes.
I wasn't really aware of the Black World Studies department or degree, but coming in as an undecided freshman and having to, pick out your coursework and I remember we had to pick out a foreign language, and I had taken 12 years of Spanish and knew none of it. I'm not a good language learner, and I saw that Swahili was an option, and I just thought that was so cool that it was offered. And I, again, like Lisette said, I really like small classroom sizes, so like it was less intimidating. I ended up loving Swahili so much. And I currently get to use it today with my clients. Most of my clients are from the Democratic Republic of Congo, and most of them speak Swahili. So it's been really fun to integrate that into my work. But after Swahili, I kind of had no idea what I was doing, kind of just tried whatever. And then I was really interested in sociology. And I feel like sociology and Black World Studies are really a great extension of each other, and they're very easily intertwined. And then I remember my advisor at the end of my freshman year, I sat in her office and cried because I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I felt like as a rising sophomore, I should know exactly what I wanted to do as a career, which is just hilarious. That is absolutely not how it goes. And she's like, I think you should go to Tanzania. You love Swahili. You're really interested in all these different things. And she walked me over to Dr. Quay's office, and I had missed the deadline by like 6 months to apply. And he's like, yeah, come on in. And so I got to go. I didn't really have time to prepare for it, but it was just like a great little, universe moment. And while I was in Tanzania, I fell in love with all that Black World Studies had to offer, and how expansive it was, and then how niche you could get with it. And when I got back, it was just very easy to just finish the degree, since all of the coursework was in the Black World Studies department while abroad. And it really impacted me, and it pushed me to then my senior year go, I don't know if it's still a program with OWU, but the Chicago Center for Urban Life and Culture. It's an internship program in Chicago, and that was a really transformative experience. Again, I had no idea. I felt like crying, and I got there, and I was, kind of, here are my interests. I spent time abroad in Tanzania, and they kind of pushed me toward a resettlement agency. I walked in and fell in love. It's a chaotic work environment. I thrive in chaos, and I just loved how I could theoretically understand some of the things that I was seeing in place, like systemic racism, how language impacts somebody's ability to, participate in American, society, and how some of it's celebrated and how oftentimes it's not. And then took a gap year in between my master's, did some other work and realized that wasn't for me, and found my way back to refugee resettlement. And I don't know if I'll ever leave. It's a great place. And I think these degrees and these experiences that I had at OWU, they just really set me on the path. And I'm, 27 and I can say that I have a dream job, which I think is insane at this point. And especially with COVID, I feel very lucky to say that.
Wonderful. Thank you. Jessica?
Yeah, I think I was always interested in women's studies more in an abstract way. When I was in high school, like it seems like forever ago to say this, but like the internet wasn't what it was today. So there wasn't the kind of like learning and blogs and information and Instagram that was so readily available, especially related to issues of social justice. It just wasn't accessible at my fingertips. But I was really drawn to that work. And so I thought that I would major in political science, but and minor in women's studies, but I came to OU and was lucky enough to have a women's studies class my fall of my first year. And I was just immediately in love and challenged and stretched and, pushed to think about issues in new ways. And that really motivated me throughout the rest of my studies. I went to a very large public high school, and so I'd never been in a small discussion-based class before. My mom was a non-traditional student, and so I was the first person in my family to like kind of go away or have like a traditional college experience. And so that was really important in my development at OU, and I just learned so much. In fact, I did do an honors project in women's studies, and I worked with Professor Flam in history, and that was a really powerful experience to just do independent study and practice research skills and reading and writing, and that was really positive for me. And then I graduated in 2008, which was peak recession after the financial collapse, and so there were no jobs. And so I went right into graduate school, which I don't know if I would still do today, but at the time that was a good move for me because I knew I wanted to pursue a graduate degree. And because the job market was so bleak, it was a good time to do that and to be in school. And I, continued learning in my women's studies master's degree. That was a really powerful experience at SDSU. I moved to San Diego. I never thought I would stay here, but I just kind of got roped in, and I've been on faculty at SDSU, and I worked in nonprofit running programs for girls at Jewish Family Service. And, but all of that really I attribute to the learning and the mentorship I got at Ohio Wesleyan. And so I just think back very fondly to those learning experiences, especially the small class discussions really helped me to feel confident as a learner and a thinker and, someone who could engage in knowledge production.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Carly?
When I got to OU, I was dead set that I was going pre-med, was going to be a doctor. Mary Kate can talk about how in Tanzania, I really came up with all this medical knowledge from Google. But while I was in Tanzania, I kind of realized that maybe the hospital kind of medical setting wasn't for me. And I liked more of the personalization behind the medicine. So what kind of factors attribute to people accessing medical care, what leads to like healthy lives and other things like that. And so it kind of led me into the direction of public health. And I think Dr. Quay also has such a strong like for public health, and he really includes it in almost all of his classes. So that definitely helped with that. But I think the small class sizes, like everybody has said, really helped me get to know the material as best as I could. And I think that the professors, I had Sean Kay as my advisor and Dr. Quay, and both of them throughout college, my graduate school experience and job hunting helped me throughout the way with reading applications, helping me with interview questions, because they both, Sean Kay had federal jobs and Dr. Quay had an expertise in PEPFAR and federal things with public health, and also has done grants and research and stuff, which helped me with my fellowship. The professors definitely stay with you if you create those relationships with them while you're at OU. And I think that's something else that kind of drew me to both programs, is that they were both so invested in their students.
For sure. And I think, thank you, Carly. And I agree. I mean, I think you can talk with every alumni who's had those close relationships, and those are super impactful and extremely important. So the next question we're going to go into is something that a few of the panelists touch on, but I think it deserves its own question. When talking about graduate school, I know it can be very difficult to decide if you want to go at all, what you're going for. Are you going for a master's? Are you going for a doctorate? So if each of the panelists could, and we're going to go in reverse order this time, so starting with Carly, just talk about how you decided to go back for a graduate degree, how you knew what program was right for you, and just kind of what your thought process was through the whole thing.
All right, like I said before, I kind of was thrown into public health. I don't know if Dr. Craig kind of had, this goal for me in mind, but it's come to fruition. So while I was at OU, I started looking for schools and looking at jobs that I would want, not necessarily that I could get right out of college, but what my dream job would be. And I realized that a lot of them did require me to have a master's in public health or in international relations or development or something like that. And so that's kind of why I decided to go for my master's. I don't know if other things that I would have wanted to do would require it, but I know the jobs that I kind of see myself doing that I will love do, and that's kind of what pushed me towards it.
No, that makes perfect sense.
It's a good question. I think for me, I knew that whatever work I wanted to do would need to be informed by a feminist lens, because that's really at the core of the way that I see the world and the way that I see my work. And so going in pursuing women's studies was like, I think a good step, because it provided me some options to do that. But I would say, a graduate degree is a really big investment in time and resources, and sort of sets you on a trajectory, and it sets you up to move to a place. Now, a lot of places will require a graduate degree to be hired in that field. It doesn't always mean that you have to have a specific graduate degree. So I don't want to make it seem like you're locked in, like once you do it, you can't ever change paths, because that's definitely not the case. But it definitely like sets you in a direction. So I think it's easy to kind of stumble into grad school, which I certainly did. I'm guilty of that. But I would say, like, really making sure that you have some time to pause and reflect and make sure that that's an investment you really want to make, just to be thoughtful about your time and your resources. I was certain when I finished my MA that I never wanted to go back to school again, and I was totally down with that. And then things changed in my career, and I'm in a senior leadership role, and a lot of my lateral colleagues have doctorates and terminal degrees. And so after a period of time, I just sort of discovered that it would be important for my credibility and my sort of my position, and if I move on from SDSU, which I do plan to do at some point, that to be competitive for similar roles, I would need to have a terminal degree. But I've got a young son, and it's a lot to do, and I'm working full time and going to school full time, so it's a lot. But there are programs that are thoughtful about working professionals too. So I think especially with graduate school, there's lots of different ways to make it fit into your life. There's not one way to be a graduate student. And so, you can always go back. My partner too, he's on his third career, and he just went back to school for a second master's for another career change. I don't recommend that, but you can always do that. And, we work for a long time, and so there's lots of opportunities to like hone and switch careers or switch directions too. So I guess that's my 2 cents.
Well, Carly and Jessica really covered a lot. So like Carly, truly my senior year of undergrad, I truly didn't know that I wanted to be a social worker. I was in that internship position, and I saw social work interns, and I was the only non-social work intern. And I just didn't realize that was social work. I'm guilty of thinking social work is only welfare and, making sure children are safe under the Department of Child and Family Services. That is not true. I could go on and on about how expansive social work is and what you can do and all those options. But when I graduated, the first job that I could get with my bachelor's was working in residential treatment with young men with autism spectrum disorder, as well as some comorbidities, and they were there for really maladaptive, dangerous behaviors. They couldn't be in their home. And I quickly realized I am not a direct service kind of girl. I really appreciate the macro lens, and I think that really lends to what you learn in Black World Studies and sociology and anthropology. And that's when I was like, oh, social work, this is what I want to do. So in Ohio, you cannot take the licensed social work exam without a bachelor's or a master's in social work. You used to be able to do related degrees, which I definitely could have done. So I had to go get my master's in order for me to pursue this kind of work. And just like Carly, I looked for my dream job. I knew I wanted to work in resettlement, and all the things I knew in my heart that I'd be good at required a license. So I stumbled into social work school because that's the kind of jobs I wanted. And then once I got there, like Jessica was mentioning, there's so many different paths and there's so many different ways to be a graduate student. And it is a very large investment of your mental well-being, and you've really got to be on top of that, and you've really got to sit with it and know that it's the right decision for you at that time. It's always going to be available to you. So live life, do a little something in between, and figure out what you don't want to do and then what you want to do. And then know that it is a huge financial investment. And if you're lucky and smart, you'll search for other places that, you know, will provide, you know, you could be a fellow, you could do a lot of different work, you could work, you know, within the school that you're attending. So piece it and part it together. It's a little stressful, but it is worth it in the end, especially if it's something that you're really passionate about.
Really. Well, thank you to all three of you. I definitely resonate with a lot of what you're saying. I feel like I took a little bit of a different path. I took a 5-year break from school, and I'm now just going back, and I really enjoyed that I did. And when I left OU, I definitely felt tired and a little bit like I needed a reset to figure out what the next step was. And I knew that what I loved the most at OU was service. I was a very service oriented person. So I was constantly in, helping people. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to stick with that, and I'm going to get jobs helping people and see what it leads to. In those 5 years, I changed my mind about graduate school a lot. And I thought of a lot of different paths that I wanted to take. I constantly reached out to those women and gender studies professors and really leaned on them for support to figure out what is a good option for me. And then realized, kind of like what Mary Kate is saying, I stumbled into social work because when I looked at all of this experience that I had collectively over 5 years, I realized, oh, all of it is social work. I just didn't realize I was doing social work. And the University of Michigan has a really great option where you can actually get an advanced certificate if you have been in the field for some time. So I applied for that and was able to, I'm going to now be able to finish my master's in 1.5 years, which is very great, and then be able to keep practicing. My main goal is direct service, and is specifically in Spanish. Being in this field, realizing just any language service is really difficult, and people really struggle to get the services that they need and for them to be culturally competent in their native language. So I'm really excited to be able to offer mental health support in Spanish in the future, and wish me luck, guys, because I'm a little scared of graduate school, but I think I'll be okay.
The fact that you got the advanced generalist, you're on your way. You're doing great.
Thank you.
No, that's wonderful, and congratulations. I know that's a big deal, getting that kind of certification and helping with that process.
Thank you.
So thank you all for sharing all of that. Again, just for a little bit of brevity, I'm going to kind of combine the next 2 questions. Just so that we can be sure to get to everything and still have time for some Q&A at the end. But talking about your time at Ohio Wesleyan and kind of translating it into the future, if you had one skill that you really were able to hone during your time at Ohio Wesleyan, kind of what would that be, And then also thinking about, what advice would you give to somebody trying to come into your industry or coming out with your same degree? What do you wish you had known when you were graduating, when it was May of your graduation year, going to look for jobs? And we can again start with Lisette, if that's okay.
Yeah, so when I think of one skill, I think it's definitely diversity. The wonderful thing about OWU is that it's like a little snapshot of what the world could be if you choose to engage in diversity and diverse conversations with diverse people. And there's constantly opportunities to do that. And I met people that I never thought I was going to meet in college and be able to have opportunities that I never thought I was going to do because of that. And then in terms of one thing I wish I would have known about after graduation is that there really is no pressure. I think when I graduated, there was such a sense of everybody around me knows what they're doing. Everybody has their plan. Everybody either has a job or knows what school they're going to. And since I don't, I must be the odd one out. But then I quickly realized that everybody was a little bit lost and everybody was just trying to figure out their next step. So taking a deep breath and knowing, you got your degree, there are options for you. Sometimes the best thing you can do is just start, whether it is like a job, whether it is applications, and reaching out to people around you and really knowing that, you graduate when you're 22 to 25, there is time to do anything you want to do and there's not necessarily a rush.
Lisette, I think you really hit good ones. I think when I think of a skill, it's really a mantra that I say every single day. Control what you can control, right? I can only control what I'm doing, what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking, and what I want to do. I can't play what if. I can't should myself, like I should be doing this, I should be doing that. Take a deep breath. And I think really my advice is take a deep breath. Like Lisette said, we're kind of all lost. And I think that a really important exercise that I hope that you do throughout your time is really thinking, what are you good at? What like feeds your soul, what fills your cup, whatever you want to say, what gets you up and running, what spark from a class or, maybe a theory to practice grant keeps you coming back, and try to figure out what it is, try to articulate it, and then just put out that search. Definitely lean on, your close, relationships and see what they think. And really, like everyone said before, the professors at Ohio Wesleyan are just so invaluable. They really, really help you. I'm still very, very close with Dr. John Durst. JD, as I don't know if anyone else knows him, but he really helped, help me throughout all of my processes. And Dr. Quay was a really good sounding board as well. So take a breath. You got it.
I think for me, when I finished my master's degree was when I was kind of on the job hunt, and I was in San Diego and I had no idea what like organizations were in San Diego, what was in the community I was living in, because I was just sort of there focused on my master's degree. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh shoot, I gotta look around and see what's going on. So I would say, wherever you are physically, where you think you might be working, like really just looking around, and you don't have to be that proactive, early on, but just kind of seeing like what organizations are near me that I'm interested in, what kind of jobs do they have? What are they hiring for? What would someone need to be hired at that organization, so you can like start to think about it a little bit. I think that would have prepared me a lot emotionally for what that process was like. I also did this really embarrassing thing where I just thought that I was more qualified for jobs than I was. I had zero, professional working experience. I just had degrees, and I was like applying for these jobs with like titles, and I was like, yeah, sure, why not? I could do that job. And not to anybody's surprise, I got absolutely absolutely zero calls back. And then after a couple of months of that, I was like, maybe I need to do something differently. So I clearly was not utilizing some of the resources in like career services and things like that to help me be set up for success. So I would say kind of lean on the people in your field and the resources that OWU has and anywhere else you might be in school to sort of figure out like, I'm interested in this, like what's a good entry level position? Because I think sometimes it's easy to overshoot. And that's not to say don't reach for the stars or put in an application for something that's a little out of reach, but you also want to be in like the same galaxy. And I was not in the same galaxy. And then I think at OWU, I think being a critical thinker and being able to, being in those small classes really teaches you to engage in discussions and think out loud and say what's on your mind and process with others. And that's such a valuable skill in the workplace and at grad school. I know in my graduate program, I was with people who had never been in a seminar class before, or only had one or two, and it was really challenging for them to learn how to engage with the content. So that was a skill that really served me.
I think for me, like with SET, diversity definitely played a role, especially in grad school with public health and trying to find those different social determinants of health and what kind of leads people to healthy lives and how we can improve health equity and access to resources. And that going from like a liberal arts school to a more research-based school, you kind of don't always see like the intersectionality of different subjects or different coursework. And I definitely appreciate OWU in that it made me a more well-rounded student and just a more worldly person, because I took classes with people that had only gone to more research-based institutions that focused solely on those issues and didn't have all these other skill sets that I think have been very valuable in how I kind of view different topics in public health. And as for advice, I would say, I feel like we've all heard it, but progress isn't linear. And when I got out of college, I kind of went straight to grad school because I really love learning. It just makes me very happy. And after that, I was working at a pool. Like that was my job in high school. And I was like, what am I doing? I have a degree, I'm working on my second degree, and I'm a lifeguard, I'm teaching swim lessons. And it kind of got me into a place where mental health wise, I just was like, what am I doing with my life? What am I doing with my goals? Like, why am I still here? Doing this job that I don't like, why am I not progressing? And it kind of I need to take time for myself to kind of figure out what I needed to grow personally, professionally, so that I could move forward with my goals, and just knowing that where you are now is not where you will be, and it's not stagnant, and knowing that there will be movement forward and backward, and progress just isn't linear. It's not going to be straight to the top, the job that you want. There's a lot of back and forth.
That is all incredible advice, and thank you all for sharing all of your experiences, all of your knowledge, all of your on-the-job initiatives. And now we're just going to go into closing thoughts. I think we are running a little bit over, so I'm going to say like a minute per person, just anything else you want to throw out there, and then we will launch into individual questions, and we can start with Lisette.
Yeah, I think just a closing thought is, at the end of the day, connections are so important. At OWU, the connections that you make there with peers, the connections that you make with those professors, really hold on to those and use those when you leave Ohio Wesleyan, and go back and lean into those if you are not sure what you want to do, if you need a letter of recommendation, if you want to connect with a classmate in your area who might have a job opening. Use your network, because it is a great network and it's something that will benefit you a lot.
My final thought was essentially what Lisette said, but I think adding on alumni, definitely attending these things is just so valuable. Whether you didn't know that you really thought you didn't know what public health was, and then Carly, spoke about her great organization and the work she's been doing. I love getting alumni, emails. I love interacting with that kind of thing, and I'm really passionate about it. And if at one point an Ohio Wesleyan graduate came up to me and I was able to hire them, that would be so cool. So when we say like definitely create these connections, it is important. I was so embarrassed for some reason to do that, but do it. It's really great.
Yeah, I was embarrassed by that stuff too. And now I have regrets about that. So I echo what Lisette and Mary Kate shared. And then I think I was so riddled with anxiety during all the transitions between school and career. And that's a very understandable and reasonable reaction. But there's also like so much possibility in front of you in those moments. Like now I'm sort of on a path and there's like less possibility. So I kind of wish I could have just like sat with that a little bit more and kind of found a little bit of joy or opportunity in the different directions that were ahead of me. So I would say if it's possible, and it probably wasn't for me because I'm just an anxious, high strung person, but if it's possible for you to just kind of be open to everything that's in front of you, I would encourage you to do that.
I definitely agree with everything that's been said. Can't stress enough just networking, because I personally just hated it. I don't like talking to new people. I don't like doing the same thing over and over and feeling like I have to sell myself to somebody else for them to kind of acknowledge my skills. But I think like while you're networking, like try to create those personal connections, make things more personable, and it makes it feel like you're not just like selling your skill set to somebody else because you're creating those like personal connections with them.
Thank you all. That was all fabulous. I appreciate all of you being here. I'm going to go ahead and cut the recording. The second half of the program is a personal Q&A program. That is usually the perk of attending the program live. So this part will go up on YouTube, and I'm going to stop the recording right now.